the big news today, obviously, Johan Langer has done his post-transfer window post-mortem, let's call it. And it's like a bit of a nothing burger, really, of an interview. He's given a lot of excuses about, only 33 transfers, he says, has been done across the Premier League over January. It's a very difficult window to do transfers. He's also gone on to say that no one expected 7 injuries by the end of the transfer window, which has maybe changed their plans. He says, we don't want to make signings that don't make an impact in the short term to medium term. We have to only sign players that do make an impact in short, medium term, and maybe the long term as well. So kind of given a few reasons why Spurs haven't made as much transfer business this window as we would have liked. Sarah, did you watch the Johan Lang video? And, what are your feelings surrounding what he's saying?
Yes, I did. I mean, he's an interesting character, isn't he, Lange? I don't know if he's the most charismatic guy, but yeah, I mean, what a turn of events from the beginning of the season when he was sitting on there, well, actually, they got rid of the sofa, didn't they? Yeah. Maybe they're making budget cuts because they were on chairs, but yeah, I guess it was only a few months ago.
You didn't have Fabio Paratici man-spreading like you did in the first video, yeah.
Exactly. And I think that just shows that the amount of change that's even happened just in this window, not just from the actual transfers themselves, but maybe the people behind the scenes who have been running the show, because we know Lange is not really the guy who deals with the main transfers. He's, well, before Paratici made his announcement of leaving, he was the guy who was in charge of the youth. So, look, it's been a very disappointing window, I think. I think it's been a disappointing window for a lot of clubs, but considering where we are at in the league and considering how many injuries we have, I think it's particularly disappointing that we couldn't even manage to get one more signing through. I think we would have expected 2, and it's a shame that we couldn't get 1. And there are a lot of excuses because, look, there's ways around it. You can get loan players, there's other things that you can do. And I don't know if that's maybe a change in personnel that's affected how they've managed to bring in transfers. But yeah, I would say overall it's a bit disappointing. And the video didn't really tell us much that we weren't already speculating anyway.
Yeah, it was going to be hard for... We're all expecting, waiting for this video, but then also kind of expected them to Lang to say what he did say at the end of the day, isn't it? Like, we didn't really expect him to say anything different. And that's kind of the frustrating thing, where everyone was like at the end of the window, like, okay, let's hear them trying to explain this away. But at the end of the day, they're always going to try and make excuses. Stel, did you watch the video? Was there anything you took away from it?
Yeah, I wish I could be as articulate and diplomatic as Sarah, but for me, it's an absolute abomination what they've done. I think it's disgusting, honestly. We were told by journalists £150 million war chest, so either the journalists are all a bunch of liars or the club are lying. Somebody's lying to us. I thought the person doing the interviews couldn't have been any more biased and unbalanced if he tried. He was so sympathetic to Lange in his questioning, zero sympathy towards the fan base.
But it's run by the club still. What do you expect? It's obviously he's going to be giving him softballs.
But yet the video, they start by saying, oh, it's good doing these videos. It's good to let the fans know what's going on. No, it's not for the fans. You're doing it for yourselves. It was another ENIC PR machine at work. Sick to death of hearing this kind of rhetoric from the football club. It's just another repackaged statement with a corporate spin on it. And this is what we've been fed for how many years now? Look, when he said, oh, we didn't expect 7 injuries in January, they knew we had injuries stemming back to October. They knew Maddison was out for the season and Kulu was practically out for the season before then. They knew we had key injuries. They knew the injuries were building up prior to the transfer window. So this war chest was a non-starter. The way they did the questioning was just a corporate PR video to just make themselves look good. And to say that they didn't expect the injuries. We went into the window knowing we needed reinforcements because of existing injuries, not the ones we picked up in January. I felt the whole video was pathetic, and I expect nothing less from ENIC because this is what they do every single time. That's my take on it. I wish I could be more articulate, but unfortunately, I'm just not made that way.
Sarah, I thought that was one quite interesting element in terms of in the video when Lange said we don't want players who can't contribute in the short to medium term. I found that quite interesting because Frank has consistently said we don't want players who only can contribute in the short term, but also the long term. And so Frank is consistently saying, you know, we are aligned. But then on the kind of the statements they're making to the fans, like separately, is there a sense of misalignment there when Langer's saying we only want players to come in now who can contribute short to medium term, but then Frank is saying we only want players who can contribute to the long term?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a bit of that. I think in one of the videos that I did the other day, I was talking about how I guess where we're at the moment is you're planning for the long term, but given the January transfer window and the nature of the window, and it's a World Cup season, we can all say, okay, it is a bit more logistically challenging. But I think there is a case to say that part of long-term planning is also planning for the medium term as well, but also a best case scenario and a worst case scenario. So like Stelios was saying, we already had injuries in January. The challenge was, as we progressed through January, and I did a full breakdown of this yesterday, was the change of personnel from the injuries that we actually had, because we had a lot of injuries in our front line, and then we had injuries to our midfield, and then we had injuries to our back line. So then the question becomes, well, what do you prioritize? So we all knew when the window opened, we needed a left back. That's something that we've needed full rotation for a couple of seasons now. And we also knew that maybe someone in our midfield, and of course we got Gallagher in, and then maybe we needed someone on the wings. So I think there is a case to suggest that a medium-term appointment like Robertson, for example, who we were linked to, would have been a good place to fill, because then you bring experience into the squad. It's someone that maybe you could see for the next year or two to cover that Davis gap that's been left from his injury, which came in the early days, or I think it was like the 19th of January. So there's been a lot of change as the window's progressed, but I still think they could have brought someone in for this medium term, for the next year or two, to stabilize things, to bring in the experience and the skills that we need to strengthen the squad. And look, they're the ones who are setting the remit of being able to compete on all fronts. Of course, as fans, we want to win things. We want to get as high up the table as possible. But they're setting the parameters. And who knows, maybe behind the scenes, they're changing the goalposts. At some point, I think they went back on their decision about Frank. The uncertainty of what came about after that West Ham game made them shake a little bit. And I think that also might have affected their confidence in signing players. I also think it's complete incompetence as well, just to say. Like, I also think that, since Paratici's left, it's no coincidence that he left on the same day as Gallagher was brought in. He was the parting gift from Paratici.
Yeah.
There was no other signings after that point. So we've had no one at the helm. He's probably gone on gardening leave. And reality is we haven't had anyone. So I think Frank is very valid in what he's saying. Look, he's defending his position, and I think he's actually been very diplomatic in the way he's saying it, because he knows what the board is thinking. He knows I'm sure he's told them he needs players. I would be very surprised if Frank hasn't gone to Lange and Paratici and Vinay and had conversations about needing players. It would seem strange.
Stel, in a couple of times in this interview, he mentioned
Tim, sorry, I need to jump off for 5 minutes. Sorry.
5 minutes? Yeah, it's all right. Yeah. Don't worry. We'll get you back on.
We've got him already.
He's gone. So I'll bring this to you then, Sarah. He said a couple of times in this interview the phrase stress purchases. They don't want to make any stress purchases given the injuries. He said if there were any players available this window who were good for us in the long term and also the short term, we were ready to go. We were ready to spend the money, but we didn't want to make any stress purchases. Is he kind of in a way kind of using the injury crisis in a sense as an excuse not to make signings because we don't want to panic, in a sense that if we didn't have the injuries, like would the purchase wouldn't be a stress purchase because we wouldn't be in desperate need, but because we are in desperate need, we don't want to panic buy as such.
It is a tricky one. Look, you always need a squad. All right, the strength of the squad and the depth of the squad plays into the whole conversation about what transfers you're going to buy. And so it's a very sticky situation because we have in the past, traditionally, how Spurs have worked is we have worked in that last 24-hour period of transfer windows. It's no secret that Levy was the one who was getting all the deals over the line like an hour or two before the window closed. So, of course, he's no longer at the helm. And so it's a combination of things, I think. I think nothing works in isolation, right? One thing's going to have a domino effect on several other things. So I think it is tricky to say that you're going to make impulsive signings because look, we've done it in the past. We did it with Dragusin, we did it with Kinski, we did it with Danso, albeit Danso was a good signing. We got Ted on loan, we got Timo Werner. Like all of these names are people who came in like very last minutes and very stressful points of the transfer window, and look what happened to Timo Werner. Look at the backlash that Teller's received. So I think there is a case to say that if you bring in players that are rushed signings that don't fit what the vision is, whatever that vision is, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, that you do then get yourself in a position where you're spending money in a way that is not really investing in the squad for the future. It's more investing for the now. And is that a good long-term strategy? Of course, we're all impatient and we want to see it. We want to see the transfers now. We want to see the squad reinforced. But I do take that point on as much as, we would love to have seen signings. You do have to be a bit realistic that if you do sign someone, we would all be sitting here saying, why did we sign that player? They're mediocre. They're not going to do anything. Get rid of them. And then you're stuck with a player that maybe in a couple of years' time you're going to sell at a loss. So that's also not economically viable from the business perspective, which of course is what the business side's biggest concern is. So, we're looking at it from the pitch and they're looking at it from the business side. But either way you spin it, if you bring in someone who's mediocre, are you going to put them in the Champions League squad? You've got 2 spots left. Are they going to be better than Tell? Are they going to be better than who else is Dragusin?
I think Dragusin, yeah.
Yeah, Dragusin and Tell, are they going to be better or are you just going to do a like for like? In which case, well, you might as well keep what you've got and then go in the summer. But it's not ideal.
I understand that. I think we definitely have been guilty of panic buying before, so I understand what he's saying. But I almost feel like he's using the fact that it would be panic buying because we have injuries as an excuse to say we don't want to kind of push the boat out right now in January with limited options because we have this injury crisis, and it would be panicking rather than in another scenario where what does the recruitment team and the scouting team do for 4 months when we've had all this time to look for players leading up to this big window, which is the first window post Daniel Levy. Lang and Paratici were co-sporting directors, and they were saying how Frank has been saying how since October or September time they've been planning for this window, and yet we get rejected by Semenyo even before the window opened, and then we didn't have another option, it seemed, kind of for that left wing position. So I don't understand what the scouting or recruitment department have been doing for 4 months. If it was just what I could have told them we should go for Semenyo, it's not hard. Like, what are the surely the recruitment team are there to scour the Europe and the markets to see what kind of talent there is out there. Stel, welcome back to the show. Lang says if there was talent there that could help us now, we're ready to go. We're willing to spend the money. That's what he says. So he's implying there isn't that talent out there now or available. Do you have any sympathy with that argument? Do you think there's always a player available, or do you think sometimes there just isn't someone who can help right now?
Well, we needed a left-sided attacker in the summer, and we didn't get one. And when we found out Solanke was injured, we needed someone else up top. So they're not prepared to use Mikey Moore, Dane Scala, or any academy player. They're not interested in the academy kids. So where's that player going to come from? It's all good and well saying, well, if the player's not available, then we're not going to panic buy. You're 14th, and if you don't pick up some positive results in the next 3 games, you could be in a relegation battle. We're not in one. But 14th is not acceptable. So what we're just going to linger in this kind of low mid-table position just because the recruitment team, who earn quite a lot of money, can't identify one single player in world football that can come to Spurs. I don't buy that. Our biggest issue is we do not score enough goals. We don't create enough goals. Okay, we might have a bit more creation at the moment because we seem to be a little bit more attacking. But you take Van der Ven and Romero, the centre backs, out of the team. Who's scoring the goals? They're two of our highest scorers. So now Solanke's back. There's an argument to say, okay, well, Solanke can do it. So the whole club is going to rest on Solanke's shoulders. It can't be like that. There are players out there that we could have approached that are better than what we've got. Mateta is better than Dane Scarlett. He's proven. Mitoma, Lookman, these are players that can come to Spurs and play in positions. But for the recruitment head to turn around and say, there's no one out there that meets the profile, then what is your profile? What is the criteria you're following? I find that hard to believe. They managed to find Timo Werner on loan last year. Not that I'm a big fan of his, but they found a player. We can't find a loan deal for a player. I just find it a very difficult thing to accept when they've had not 4 months. They've had since the summer. They knew we needed to address this issue since the summer. So, listen, they know how to cleverly word and put together a statement, a video, whatever it may be, to finesse and caress the fan base into believing what they say. This is what they do. They've been doing it for how many years, and they're doing it again. I don't buy a single word. If they really wanted to go and bring in a player that could help us now, they could have done it. Then there might be some players that say no, we don't want to play for Tottenham. You're rubbish. We're not playing for a team that might be in relegation. We're not playing for a team that Frank's the manager, or we're not playing for a team where certain players are there and I don't want to play with those players. I get that. We're going to get rejected, but not by every player in the world. Why couldn't we get Akalush? Why couldn't he come to us? Again, these are all players that apparently we can't get. Then I would say Hitchin got blamed for not bringing in Skriniar. Paratici has been less favoured than Lange, which is why Paratici's often was sticking with Lange. So if Lange is better than Hitchin and Lange is better than Paratici, he's not really proving much, is he? What's he proven to us as a fan base in terms of his work? So I don't buy it, Sim. Not for me. I think if they really wanted to do it, they could have done it. I do think maybe Frank has turned down a couple of players. I do think that's a possibility. But then if that's the case, then Frank can't complain about results.
Are you saying you don't think that the funds have actually been made available?
I think funds have been made available, but I don't believe the funds that have been circulated are necessarily the amount that's been made available.
Right. You think the budget's far smaller than the big numbers that have been publicised?
It wasn't 150 million. Not a chance in hell. No. Not a chance. The fact we had to sell Brennan Johnson before buying Gallagher tells you everything.